people to understand their bodies, understand the importance of exercise, of good nutrition, of all the other ways that we can care for ourselves mentally. And when I thought about what I wanted to say in introduction, um, these are the things I wanted to say. So I'm a psychiatrist. I spent a very long time getting an education in the United States. I'm also certified in global mental health and refugee trauma through the Harvard program in refugee trauma, but perhaps most relevant to this particular population and this particular discussion, I am Black and East Indian. I'm an immigrant, I'm a woman, and I very much have a lived experience. And I look forward to speaking to all of you and sharing with you and having you share with me today. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. And we're going to pass it over to Jessica. Jess, do you prefer Jessica or Jess?
Jess, usually, yeah. Thanks, Rosie.
You're welcome.
I'm Jess Santos. It's so nice to be here. Wonderful to meet everyone. I'm the director of the Leah Zallman Center for Immigrant Health Research. We are a research center, a group of research and evaluation folks who are at the Institute for Community Health. We're located in Malden, but we work all across the state and nationally. And we're focused on immigrant health and well-being from a social and structural determinants point of view. I'm not a clinician, I'm more of a social policy researcher, so I'll be speaking from that perspective. And personally, I have lived as an immigrant myself in other parts of the world and in a blended family with immigrant family members.
Thank you for sharing.
Rosie, before Andrea, will you enable translation? Claudio is here to support, but you need to enable it as the host.
No, it's me.
Did you say me, Mary?
Yes. You'll need to enable interpretation, and Claudio can remind people how to access it too.
How do I enable it? I've never done that. Is there a way? Siobhan, can you help me?
Yeah, if you go to your host tools.
At the bottom?
At the bottom of your screen, it should be host tools. It's like a shield.
It's next to share.
It's next to share. The settings?
Along the bottom panel, it's like participants, chat, react, share, host tools.
I don't have host tool. I have setting. I have more. Let me go.
Click on more.
More, show, breakout, settings, meeting, host tools.
Host tools, yep. Click on that.
And then enable.
It'll say interpretation.
Interpretation. Advance. I don't see interpretation here. Accessibility, maybe? Nope. That's interesting. I don't see that. Let me get out of there.
So under your host tools, you don't see like interpretation or speech translation?
No.
Interpretation has to have been enabled before you created the Zoom.
Oh, God.
So
No,
you might
see it.
like when you create the Zoom link.
Oh.
Yeah, it's kind of
no wonder. I'm like
not intuitive.
Yeah, you have to have it inside.
Okay. Well, just for interest of time, we'll keep moving forward. And I guess make sure you are speaking slowly, and we'll make sure we're more thoughtful of this moving forward.
Yeah, sorry about that, everyone.
So do you want Claudio to help with like interpretation in the chat? Like what would you like for his role to be this evening?
Yeah, I would think in the chat would be helpful since I didn't enable it prior to scheduling the Zoom. If anyone could put in the chat if you need interpretation, maybe Claudio can create, you know how you can go and create a little group in the chat and then, can do some translation there.
So basically, try our best. We do apologize for the night. It's the first time we're learning. But Claudio, thank you for being here. And if you could just help with this interpretation in the chat, we'll be grateful.
Yes,
Thank you. You can
one
continue.
thing I can help if you
I
can
apologize
give me some,
again.
if you can give me some prompts to translate. Otherwise, I'm not quite sure what I'm supposed to be interpreting.
It's going to be,
but I'll be here.
yeah, panelist questions and things like that. So,
Okay, gotcha.
yeah. Do your best. I know that can be hard. So, handing it over to you, Andrea.
Hi, everyone. I understand. Yeah. Technologies. I'm so happy to be here. I'm very proud to be here as an immigrant, as a woman, Afro-Latina. And I have 20 years as an immigrant, and I'm proudly Brazilian, my background. And I'm happy to share what I know, my clinical training in clinical psychology, my research in mental health, my experience as mindfulness teacher, and more recently, my clinical training in cross-cultural neuropsychology. I mean, I'll explain everything because I want to meet, to understand, to feel the room and do my best. Okay? Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. And we're going to get started with the panelist questions. And this one's for you, Jessica, but also all for all the panelists as well to chime in. But let's start with Jess. There's been a lot of fear and uncertainty, stress, anxiety within many communities, particularly our very own community, due to change in immigration policy, increased ICE activity. Can you tell us what you have been noticing in the immigrant communities during this time?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And I'll put some links in the chat after I speak because we've done some research on this already in Massachusetts just in the past year. We actually did a project where we collected stories, 100 stories from people across the state just to bear witness to what people are experiencing. And so, ICE was created after 9/11 and is a relatively young federal agency, but this past year has been by far the most heavily funded and the most active year due to the Trump administration. And so what we're seeing in Massachusetts and nationally is pretty serious chilling effect, which is where people are frozen in fear because of knowing that if they do leave the house or if they do go to an appointment, doctor, mental health, school, work, they have a chance of being kidnapped or, deported or detained or potentially harmed in some way. And so what we've been describing this current time as is that we're iced in, we're in this really frozen state, more so than we've seen, even though a lot of the violence that we're seeing is not new, it's structural and it's against communities of color, against immigrant communities. So the concepts are not new, but the scale of it is, and also the experience of people who are not criminals being picked up despite the narrative that the government is going after criminals, and then people not having due process, not being able to, fight for their own rights despite the narrative that people are. So there's a really unique experience right now where people's realities do not match what the government is saying and direct harm. And so both the intimidation is a factor that drives stress, of course, right? And again, I won't speak from the clinical perspective, I'll speak more from the policy perspective, but we're basically saying that ICE is not following due process and it's not following the rule of law. And we're lucky in some ways to live in Massachusetts, where although things did not happen right away, we are seeing some real progress in city and state policymakers standing up for protecting the rights of immigrants. And we know that in those cases where in institutions and towns where people feel protected and welcome, that influences positive mental health as well. So I'll just start there.
Thank you for sharing that. Dr. Karen, Andrea, do you want to chime in? What do you know?
Yeah, what I have perceiving in the community that I am related to, that's more Latinx community, it's the increase of the fear, of course, but also I want to point out that the acculturation stress, it's something that it's permanent if you are immigrant. It's always with you. It's like a baseline that's exposure. It's an increase of exposure now. You can, of course, you can say that, but it's a level of stress that you have to learn to handle all your life when you take the decision to leave your country. And so feelings like a fear, uncertainty, feeling that lost something because you actually lost something when you leave your country, sadness, and potentially feeling that you don't belong to the place. So the sense of belongingness, it's really hard to build in the process of immigration. It's not only when you leave your country, but also you have to develop some strategies, which is very complex process to rebuild the sense that you belong to something, that you can give your best to the society. So, and what are we seeing recently in the last 3 years is more in terms of isolation and confusion, if I should stay, if I should not stay, how can I handle the family situation, because if I am immigrant, if I don't have status to be here, or have never completed the status because it's so complicated, so I have to manage the family and the kids and the school. So you feel a lot of fear as a clinician, and also it's that not those policies is not affecting. They are not affecting only the immigrants, but all the vulnerable populations that depend on benefits, social benefits, and social programs. That's something that I need to emphasize, that it's not only about immigrants, it's about everybody who is exposed to any social stressor.
Yeah. Do you want to chime in, Dr. Karen?
So I feel as though my, strong interaction with the immigrant population right now is, it's kind of 360 being an immigrant myself, and being in community, an immigrant community at my church, where a lot of is being said, programming is being done. There are a few things that I want to say, and I'm trying to decide when it's the right time to say these things, because there are patterns to this type of man-made trauma, and I feel as though once we recognize the patterns, we have a better, like a better informed way to help people to move through this. But we can probably get into that as we go along.
Yeah.
Right now at my church, there's a lot of prayer. And there's a lot of moving to pull the community together and provide protection. So I think that is amazing.
Yeah, it's much needed right now. We are better together, right? To support one and be there for one another. Yeah, I've been noticing a lot of people are not going to their doctor's appointment. Children are not going to school. People are not going to food pantries, right? to get the food they need. There's a lot of fear. Even one case I heard, like mom wasn't bringing child to school, right? The fear of, ICE catching them while dropping off or picking up. Yeah, no, that's real. So thank you for sharing that. Let's move on to the next question. This is for Jessica. Jess is only here with us till 7 o'clock. Just want to put that out there. So thank you so much, for carving out the time to be here with us for an hour. And this is for you, Jess. I know the Leah Zallman Center on Immigration Health Research has been doing important research on ICE and the impact of immigration enforcement on our community. Can you share more about who ICE is and what impact their presence and policies has had on individuals, immigrant families, children, in this community?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And again, thanks for having me. I threw a link in the chat to one of the reports that Rosie's referring to. And so we tried to understand, and Dr. Carrot, I really like what you were saying about once you can recognize the patterns, then you can approach how to resolve them. And we actually hesitated quite a bit about this work. Is this a moment to do research and to actually ask people to share vulnerable stories of trauma? And is there ever a moment where that's useful in social research? And together with a lot of partners and immigrant advocate leaders, we decided yes, because we wanted to be able to identify what are the actual patterns. And so, we basically pulled out nothing that you haven't seen on the streets and that you haven't heard from people but we're basically saying that there's harm at the individual level, which is the individual psychological trauma, economic impacts on families, direct health impacts if people can't go to, doctor's appointments, etc. And then there's the level of institutions, like we're seeing. So on the flip side, if folks are missing school, that entire class suffers, right? The whole institution of the school is weakened when we don't have the strength of our community together. And so what's been interesting is of course, first thinking about people who are directly harmed, but then thinking about the institutions that we all make up together and that form communities. Those are slowly being eroded one by one through that harm and by removing vital people from those institutions, teachers, parents, business owners, people, everyone's playing a role and contributing to society. So when you take one piece away, it weakens the whole. And then finally, from a community and geographic perspective, towns are really starting to understand the impact and Dr. Karen said, starting to come together around protecting their neighbors and realizing this is not the town or the city that we want. This is not my city. And so ICE is an arm of the federal government that was established through the Homeland Security Act after 9/11, but it actually has, like I said, tripled in funding in the last year. So a lot of the people, the actual ICE agents, are either part of Customs and Border Patrol, or there's contractors who have been brought in really, really recently and with some gaps in training that we've learned about. And so I also feel some compassion, ironically, for the families who have folks working in these systems. They were offering $50,000 bonuses for people to join ICE. If you're struggling and you want to take care of your family and you want a job, I know in some neighborhoods you had people who are working for ICE and then detaining neighbors, family members. And that's not the society that we want. And so I see it from a very individual, institutional, community level. And then the last thing I'll say about the mental health piece, I think it's not just the direct individual experience, but it's the witnessing at such a large scale in our society through media, through actual witnessing what's happening on the street, kids seeing what's happening to their adults and their family loved ones. And so again, I'm not an expert in clinical stuff, but the collective trauma feels really pervasive and widespread. And I believe it affects every single one of us. I think we have to look at the harm to communities first that are affected, but we also have to hold everyone responsible for their role.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Jess. I think we all need to really support one another in this really hard time, because we're on stolen land. Let's be real, right? Like, and I find there's so many immigrants built this land, built this country, and for ICE to just come in and try to, deport people and interrupt people's lives is unacceptable. We will not tolerate it. So thank you so much. And that kind of really led into the next question for Dr. Karen and Andrea. What are some of the mental emotional challenges immigrant individuals and families are experiencing right now in response to, ICE activity and immigration policies changing, and detention, fear, even deportation, right? People are getting snatched up into some facility far away from their community, and without due process, they're getting deported.
So I think this may be the time to present this framework.
Okay.
And if you all don't mind, if Claudio could interpret verbally. Claudio, would you mind doing that while I speak?
Sure. Well, let's give it a go.
Fabulous. So I'm going to share a slide that just presents a framework for what's happening.
Les voy a compartir una presentación sobre un marco de lo que ha pasado hasta ahora.
Can everyone see this slide?
Yep, I can see it. Thumbs up, guys.
Okay. Yeah, Claudio, I'm going to pause to let you speak as best I can. So this is a slide that I often present when I'm trying to help people understand the specific pivotal issue of man-made trauma.
Me gusta mostrar esto como para presentar el tema de que lo que yo llamo de que trauma causado por personas humanas.
Okay, so trauma can be caused by acts of nature, or it can be induced or precipitated by men, by people.
Así que el trauma puede ser causado por causas de la naturaleza, causas fortuitas, así como también también ha sido, digamos, causada por acciones precipitado por acciones de las personas, de los seres humanos.
So both are terrifying and both cause destruction and loss.
Sí, que ambos aterrorizan a las personas y ambos causan mucha destrucción y mucha pérdida.
Okay. However, the pivotal issue of man-made trauma is that it is intended to paralyze and control people using humiliation and degradation.
Sin embargo, la causa principal del trauma causado por el hombre es de que la intención es paralizar y controlar a las personas usando humillación y la degradación de las personas afectadas.
Right. And all traumatized communities have this in common.
Y todas las comunidades traumatizadas tienen esto en común.
Are you taking this off or I want to watch it? was trying to tell you about what your president did today.
Yeah.
He's building a UFC wrestling
If you can make
fight
it, make a host, I can help you,
White House.
Oh, they are, that's good for them. That's good. I'm happy. They deserve that in me because they let them do it. So fuck them with him.
Mary, we can hear you.
Give a fuck about that jackass.
I'm trying to mute. I'm sorry, whoever that is. Can you mute yourself? We do apologize for that language.
Oh, Siobhan Harrington is on this.
I'm gonna wait until it settles. I think it's yes. Okay. So once we understand this, we can see very clearly the patterns and the results of this kind of trauma.
Así que ya cuando entendemos, cuando llegamos al punto que entendemos esto claramente, es que podemos ver el padrón y los resultados de este tipo de trauma, lo que esto causa.
Okay. And these patterns existed in chattel slavery. They existed during the Holocaust. They exist in, countries where there is gang warfare, and they exist now and have existed in the U.S. In multiple iterations. The most recent being the galvanizing of people to commit violence under the color of law against immigrants.
Y esos padrones han existido durante la época de la esclavitud, durante hace un par de siglos, también existió durante la época del Holocausto y han existido y existen en países donde existen violencia de pandillas. Y existen ahora y han existido en los Estados Unidos en muchas distintas maneras, de la manera como se ha incentivado a las personas de que cometan violencia bajo el escudo, digamos, o la excusa de que es bajo la ley. Digamos, las leyes contra los inmigrantes en particular.
So with that background, let's examine what is happening here, and without going into what I call the toxic trauma story, we can talk about how this intent to paralyze and control is showing up.
Así que con eso de fondo, examinemos ahora lo que está sucediendo aquí y ahora, con lo que, sin necesariamente ir en lo que me gusta llamarle como historia de trauma tóxico. Podemos hablar por ejemplo, podemos hablar en vez de eso de cómo se intenta paralizar y controlar quién puede participar en estas secciones.
Okay. So, someone, I believe Jessica and Andrea both mentioned fear causing isolation and causing the stripping of necessary supports for human life.
Así que creo que Jessica, tanto Jessica como Andrea mencionaron el miedo que causa el aislamiento y lo que y cómo causa esto, digamos, las cosas que son necesarias para apoyar la vida humana saludable.
Okay. So this is directly related to an intent to cause these kinds of emotions and cause this trauma.
Y que eso está directamente relacionado a la intención a causar estos tipos de emociones y este tipo de trauma específicamente.
Okay. And this causes disruptions in the person, as well as in the family, and as well as in the community.
Y esto causa irrupciones en las personas, así como en la familia, así como, digamos, en la comunidad en general, digamos, directamente relacionado.
So I want to talk about the mental health consequences of this.
Así que ahora me gustaría hablar sobre las consecuencias de salud mental de todo esto.
Isolation is a big driver of depression and anxiety.
El aislamiento es una causa, es una causa que causa una gran cantidad de depresión y ansiedad. I'm sorry.
It also increases what we call aggressiveness and irritability.
También aumenta altamente lo que llamamos agresividad e irritabilidad.
It impairs memory and concentration.
También impide cuestiones de la memoria y la concentración de la persona.
It disrupts sleep.
Irrumpe el sueño también.
Okay, causes nightmares.
Causa pesadillas.
Okay, and causes people to become what we call hypervigilant, where they're constantly scanning for danger.
Y causa lo que la gente llama volverse hipervigilantes, o sea, estar constantemente buscando a su alrededor si existe algún peligro.
Okay. In addition, what people don't understand is that these mental disruptions are part of the dysregulation of the entire body.
Adicionalmente, lo que la gente no entiende es de que estas irrupciones mentales son parte digamos, la regulación de todo el resto del cuerpo humano.
Okay, so the immune system is dysregulated.
Por ejemplo, el sistema inmune se deja de estar regulado.
And it causes more inflammation in the brain and in the organs, the heart, the arteries, the entire body.
Así que esto, cuando el sistema inmune se desregula, esto causa inflamación tanto en el cerebro como en los órganos, como el corazón, las arterias, el cuerpo entero.
And it causes our cells not to function as well and our hormonal system not to function as well.
Y también causa no solo, digamos, que no funcione bien o que no funcione adecuadamente el sistema hormonal, se deja también de funcionar adecuadamente.
So when you think about it, think about ourselves as a whole person, and every part of the body is impacted.
Así que cuando pensamos sobre nosotros mismos como persona completa y todo nuestro cuerpo es afectado en este caso.
Okay, thank you so much, Claudio.
Thank you for a beautiful explanation.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
I would like to add in terms of, because there is a level of medical, in terms of health, that's interesting that in public health, you have a notion that immigration health paradox, that most of immigrants that they come here, they come in better healthy state, or they have better health indicators than some American born here, and then there is a tendency to decrease during the time they are here, or the time they are immigrants. So in terms of, that's something that shows that immigration can be a very stressful exposure. It's a baseline, as I mentioned before. And in this moment that we are living, that the uncertainty in terms of policies and criminalization of immigration, so that adds other level of stress. But you can think also stress as a basic thing of our lives. Everybody is post of stress. We have to learn to live. You have to go and move forward. But also there is a level of chronic stress. That's something that Dr. Abdool has just mentioned. When you have your body has to respond for a long time to the same level of high functioning. That's impacting. I'm sorry, I need to speak slower because of the translation, right, Claudio? Perdoe-me. Claudio?
Sem problema, a interpretação não tá indo direto nesse momento. Sem problema, pode ir.
Okay. And so the idea of thinking about health now, it's actually important to everyone who is exposed to any kind of stress. Try to minimize in an individual level, in your micro system, in families, in church, in schools, a mechanism that decreases level of cortisol or all the adrenaline that are feeling and try to reduce this reaction. Because in a long term, you have also to think that it impacts their health system. You have also epigenetics saying that not only the genetics determines the health outcomes, but also the environment can create some genetic features. And you were thinking the intergenerational trauma. So you can see how many features of health or some experiences that you have, for example, slavery, or Holocaust, go through many, you can see across different generations. So that's also concerning. It's really hard to find these evidences in terms of research. So I think that our conversation also should go through or should target how you can develop some mechanism of stress reduction or stress relief, how you can actually embrace understanding the challenge, but also embrace ways to minimize our stress in daily life. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that, Andrea. I was thinking maybe you could share. I know you're a mindfulness teacher. I am also a teacher. Maybe at the end you can show us some ways. It's not going to solve everything now.
For sure.
Help settle the nervous system so that way you can come into that rest and digest state, right? That's that parasympathetic nervous system we talk a lot about in mindfulness. Because most of the time, if you are going through a high level of chronic stress and fear, isolation, you might be in that sympathetic nervous state, which is that fight, flight, or freeze constant. And that is not good for your overall health. So Andrea will share some few techniques at the very end to help you settle your nervous system, even if it's just for a few minutes, because things will always come back up, but at least you'll have something in your self-care toolbox, I always call it, that you can keep coming back to. Yeah, you kind of answered, both of you guys already answered the next question. But Jess, I know you're about to leave, but I really wanted to hear from you before you leave on this question. How do cultural values, language barriers, or past experience with system influence the way people navigate mental health care?
Yeah, thanks for giving me the chance to weigh in on that. And this, I wanted to talk a little bit about how, you mentioned having all the tools available. And I think we have too narrow of a toolbox in our healthcare system in the United States. So one thing that I always say is globally, there are a lot of really beautiful techniques and healing modalities and practices that people have been doing for, generations. And some immigrants bring those with them to the United States, and communities can build those up here and do, right? And so we have right here in Boston a ton of examples of a weaving well-being program that was funded by the city of Boston that basically just gave money to groups that were already doing this work in community. And they were doing it in immigrant organizations, Andrea could also speak to, I know was part of one of the organizations, but we had this opportunity to see that across immigrant communities from all over the world, very different cultures, very different ways of thinking, everyone was doing similar somatic work with body and mind, connecting the body and mind pieces that Dr. Karen and Andrea were talking about. And so I think that when we say mental health in the United States, I think people automatically think about therapy and often medication, and those are really valid and important. But there are so many other elements of well-being that we could foster in all of us and in all of our communities that I would like to see policy support more of. And it's stuff that's already happening more often in immigrant communities and communities of color because it comes from those cultural practices. And I think could really not only build coping skills and strategies, but it's collective knowledge. And it's a different type of knowledge than we have within our medical system. So my hope, and I'll leave you guys with this, is that we can all work together to bridge those community-based models of care and mutual aid and well-being and those cultural practices with the health system and somehow leverage the resources that are out there so that communities can heal together. So yeah, I'm happy to leave my information, and Rosie has my links to share with everyone afterwards as well. So thanks. Have a nice evening.
Thank you so much, Jess. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night. Yeah, we need to integrate somatic therapy, different healing modalities that's worked for people like long before we came. Our ancestors practiced this. There was no therapist available. They had community, they had each other, they had rituals and self-care practices that actually work for them. I would love to see that as well in the healthcare system. Dr. Karen, feel free to, Andrea, you guys can jump in as well.
Yes. I'd like to introduce some notions before getting the practice itself, because I feel sometimes to give a broad vision how you can approach difficult situations, especially immigrants. For example, for me has been very helpful. It's acceptance. That's one of the underpinnings of mindfulness. Develop acceptance doesn't mean that you agree with the injustice. It means that you can acknowledge, you are able to stop and acknowledge your own suffering or your emotional pain or your emotional stress. So sit down and perceive when you are actually out of the balance or unease. It's important to recognize. So one ability is to be in present moment, develop the own expertise or a knowledge about yourself when you feel that you are not the best moment, and sit down and reflect on your own feelings or recognize a thought or emotion or sometimes body sensations. Some people don't realize that it is anxious or she's anxious, but sometimes you feel your heart is pounding, your digestion that is not going pretty well, or you feel too tired, too sleepy. So recognize those signs is important. So, and accept that this moment is really challenge. I think that we need to put that in clearly in all words. And other thing that's important as well, it's to recognize, to see your core values, what is important for you, what is meaningful for you in life. It is your faith, it is your family, if it is your job, it is any talent that you have. So those things are very important to cultivate or maintain, and not get lost with the news or the medias or the collective fear. If you can isolate in a positive way, it creates from inside out these values, recognize these values and maintain them. It's really nice, and move them to the actions in terms of practices. For example, I recommend for everyone who is listening to me now, like at least 3 powerful coping skills that you have. Doesn't have to be mindfulness. Can be gardening, can be cooking, can be music, can be dance, can be helping others as a volunteer in the church or in a community center. Something that you do that makes you happy. Doesn't have to do with money, has to do with professional success, doesn't have to do with personal, I don't know, it's nothing to do with posting in social media, something that makes you happy. So if you elect 3 of them, you can cultivate at least once a week. I will do that for myself, not for others. That's a coping skills. But you can add also mindfulness, of course. I'm biased about mindfulness. You can just sit down 3 minutes, put your feet on the ground, find a nice position. Doesn't have to be yogi to do mindfulness. Actually, mindfulness is an indigenous practice. It's not made for the way that society it's portrayed in mindfulness is like white, or you have to be vegan, you have to be flexible, skinny. That's a way to sell, which is nice. Yeah, because promote health. I don't know how, but it's nice to feel that mindfulness is for everyone. So for 10 years, I have been teaching mindfulness to Latinx communities, to women with 3 kids, 2 jobs, and works. And in the way that it's MBSR, the curriculum for mindful-based stress reduction program, it is possible to have 8 weeks of disciplined practice. And at the end, you had from a retreat with women or for 7 hours of silence. So it's possible to develop these skills. In terms of mindfulness, if you want to start, you can start with 3 minutes, sit down on your chair, your bed, early morning or the end of the day. You just breathe, you can just breathe in and breathe out. It's so simple, but sometimes it's getting too complicated because you have to feel the need to do so many things in life. But if you can develop this practice, 3 minutes doesn't have to be much. Sit down with yourself, because if you cannot deal with your own emotions, you cannot deal with the others' emotions. So it's really necessary this moment that you can stay and find your grounding and be yourself. But I want to hear from Dr. Abbott.
You're getting a lot of love for that, Andrea. I hope you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really beautiful.
Yeah.
I wanted to sort of touch on a few things. One of those things is the rupture of certain extremely important supports that actually protect mental health. And there are studies that, demonstrate how community protects mental health, and the way that it's preventive against many things. It's preventive against suicide. What's very interesting, and I'm gonna draw an example from the African American community, is that the African American community historically has had significant, oh my goodness, Claudio, I forgot. I apologize. Let me start again.
That's okay. I could do
using
that
the chat.
I'm taking notes. Yeah, I'm having well, I'm doing the previous one. I'm trying to do both at once, but I can do what the doctor just said. So yes, me gustaría mencionar un par de cosas. Por ejemplo, la irrupción de ciertas cosas que son extremadamente importantes para proteger la salud mental, y esos son estudios que han demostrado que la comunidad protege la salud mental en sí misma. Y es la manera que es preventivo, es preventivo contra muchas cosas, es preventivo contra el suicidio, por ejemplo. Y algo muy interesante que quería comenzar como comparación es el ejemplo de la comunidad afroamericana, es el que la comunidad americana históricamente ha tenido un significativamente, that's what I stop right there, the African American community, please go ahead.
Yes. So historically, the Yes, historically, the African American community has had low rates of suicide, completed suicide, compared to other communities. And their communities were very strong, very cohesive.
Yes, históricamente la comunidad afroamericana aquí en los Estados Unidos ha tenido muy bajos niveles de suicidio en relación a las otras, digamos, a otras etnias. Y porque en gran parte porque esas comunidades han sido muy cohesivas, han sido muy fuertes históricamente.
What we've found actually in the latest mental health census is that for the first time ever in the history of the census, the rates of suicide amongst African American children between the ages of 5 and 13 in middle class families is higher than that of white families.
Lo que hemos notado, de hecho, en los últimos, digamos, datos de cuestiones de salud mental, es de que por la primera vez en la historia del censo, es de que los niveles de suicidio entre niños afroamericanos entre las edades de 5 y 13 años de edad, de familia de clase media, es de hecho más alto que de las familias blancas.
And most times, these families are away from their communities and surrounded by, often by predominantly white neighbors.
Y algo importante para notar es de que estas familias están lejos de sus comunidades tradicionales y están rodeados predominantemente por familias blancas.
Another very interesting statistic is amongst the First Nations, the people of the First Nations, who actually historically have higher rates of suicide than other demographics.
Otra estadística bastante interesante es en las comunidades indígenas originales de este país, desde que históricamente tenían mayores niveles de suicidio que otras etnias.
When we break them down by community, the most cohesive communities have lower rates of suicide than the general population.
Y cuando los separamos digamos, por comunidades, por comunidades así individualmente, las comunidades, lo que nos damos que es las comunidades más cohesivas son las que tienen menores niveles de suicidio que la población en general.
So, one primary issue that needs to be addressed is how we can preserve community during this time.
Así que una cosa importante que tenemos que necesitamos tomar en cuenta es cómo podemos preservar nuestras comunidades durante estos tiempos tan difíciles.
Okay. So I want to bring to everyone's mind that this targeting of certain people and creating in their minds the perception that they are better than and therefore able to report their friends and neighbors is intentional.
Así que quiero hacerles entender a todos ustedes de que esta idea de enfocarse en ciertas personas para hacerles sentir un sentido de superioridad, digamos que son mejores que otras, de esa manera les facilita para que más adelante esas mismas personas delaten a sus vecinos intencionalmente.
There's parallels, for example, in chattel slavery, where there were the house slaves and field slaves, or the foremen. It created a hierarchy.
Existen paralelos, por ejemplo, cuando hubo esclavitud aquí en los Estados Unidos, cuando existían, por ejemplo, a diferencia de las ventajas que tenían los esclavos que vivían en la casa del dueño, digamos, del dueño de la plantación, y los esclavos que vivían, o también como el capataz que tenía ventajas sobre los demás. Esto creaba una jerarquía.
So, as we think about this, we need to understand clearly that there is nobody better than anyone else.
Así que cuando pensamos sobre esto, lo que necesitamos entender claramente es que nadie es mejor que nadie más.
And not succumb to this pressure and these perceptions that are being imposed upon our communities.
Así que es importante no caer a esta presión y estas percepciones que se hacen impuestas en nuestras comunidades actualmente.
We also need to figure out novel ways to preserve community.
También tenemos que buscar maneras más innovadoras de cómo podemos preservar a nuestras comunidades.
Because people are afraid to go outside.
Porque las personas tienen temor a salir.
And they're afraid to gather in the regular communal spaces where we dance and sing and, have our expressions of joy.
Y tiene su caso de que las personas tengan temor a reunirse en los lugares comunitarios regulares donde la gente va a bailar, a sentirse alegre, a expresar felicidad.
So might I suggest that we start developing cyberspaces for dancing and singing for people who are afraid, to keep connection.
Así que me gustaría sugerir, por ejemplo, comenzar desarrollando espacios cibernéticos, por ejemplo, para que las personas puedan socializar, para bailar, cantar, para que las personas que tienen temor a salir aún puedan continuar teniendo conexión con los demás.
Another issue that was raised and is extremely important is the issue of education.
Otra cosa que también se ha mencionado que es también extremadamente importante es la cuestión de la educación.
In general, again, following these patterns, the people who are most highly educated in any community that is traumatized by man-made trauma, they are targeted first.
Generalmente, nuevamente, siguiendo estos padrones, las personas que son que tienen más niveles educativos en cualquier comunidad, que están traumatizadas por traumas causados por los humanos, ese tipo de personas son los que son atacados primero.
So the targeting of schools is intentional.
Así que el atacar a las escuelas en particular es intencional.
And it bears recollection that in the history of this country, there were anti-literacy laws, so that certain groups, particularly Africans and certain other groups, it was a crime for them to be educated.
Así que es importante recordar que en la historia de este país había de hecho leyes anti-educativas, cuando ciertos grupos, particularmente las personas de descendencia africana y otros grupos de minorías, para ellos era un crimen que fuesen educados.
So again, how can we creatively approach this problem? Well, unlike in the 18 and 1700s, we now have the internet. We can connect.
Así que nuevamente nos planteamos la pregunta, ¿cómo podemos creativamente abordar este problema? Y bien, a diferencia que el siglo XVIII, el siglo XVII, el siglo XVIII, ahora tenemos la internet donde podemos conectarnos.
Because education is critical to survival in this time.
Porque la educación es algo crítico para tener como herramienta de sobrevivencia en estos tiempos.
So for those of you who do this work, if you can set up educational spaces for children whose parents are afraid to leave the house, that first of all, I think it would be reasonably easy. And secondly, I think that it would be of great benefit so kids don't lose their educational trajectory.
Así que para las personas que hacen este tipo de trabajo, se pueden crear espacios educativos para los niños cuyos padres tienen temor de dejar la casa. Antes que nada, sería razonablemente fácil de hacer, y secundariamente creo que pues sería de gran beneficio para que los niños no pierdan su trayectoria educativa.
The third thing that I want to talk about is the importance of understanding the difference between a toxic trauma story and a healing trauma story.
Y la tercera cosa de la que quería hablar es la importancia de entender la diferencia entre historia de trauma tóxica y la historia de trauma de sanación.
The toxic trauma story is the story where terrible things are told over and over and over again.
La historia del trauma tóxico es la historia donde cosas terribles suceden una y otra y otra y otra vez.
You never move out of the trauma space.
Uno nunca supera el espacio del trauma, o digamos la posición del trauma.
And people become very tempted to get on YouTube, to look at the news, to look at TikTok, to, all the social media, because they think that if they stop looking at the terrible things that are happening, they're going to miss something. You're not missing anything if you get off of social media.
Y lo que sucede es que la gente se vuelve condicionada a tener la tentación siempre de estar constantemente en YouTube, las noticias, en TikTok, en otras las redes sociales, porque piensan de que si no dejan de estar viendo todas estas cosas terribles que están publicándose constantemente, como que se les va a perder algo. Y usted no se le pierde nada si usted si usted sale un poquito de las redes sociales.
The healing trauma story puts the trauma in context. You did an incredible thing. We did an incredible thing to come from our countries and to get here. We had goals and dreams and wishes. And even in this setting, those things are still ours.
Así que la historia del trauma de sanación es donde ponemos el trauma en contexto, donde hicimos una cosa increíble. Hicimos una cosa increíble venir de nuestros países y llegar acá, de que, digamos, acá teníamos metas, teníamos sueños y deseos, y aún dentro de todos estos problemas que enfrentamos, aún así logramos superarlos.
And if you view the trauma from that lens, then you move to the solutions. You move to the online dance party, because dance, not only is it wonderful exercise, which is important for your mental health, but it has been a part of our cultures for 10,000 years or more.
Así que si usted mira este trauma desde esta perspectiva, usted usted se avanza al punto donde tiene soluciones. Usted va a las fiestas en la red, porque el bailar no solo es un ejercicio maravilloso, también es importante para la salud mental, porque ha sido parte de nuestra cultura por más de 10.000 años.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah. I see
I'd
Michelle.
like to.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Add on, Andrea. Michelle, I'll get to you right after when Andrea finishes up.
Yes, I mean, just want to add
Just wanna
to
go.
that explanation of the Abdool. Sorry if I'm not mispronouncing.
Close
And I
it up.
want to give Claudio a space to speak. It is the cultural pride. So I tell about my cultural background. The city that I came from is one of the cities outside of Africa who could maintain the African descendant diaspora culture in a very special way. I give Claudio the opportunity to translate.
Thank you, Andrea. Sorry for the confusion earlier. So, ya estaba diciendo a Andrea de que esa es su meta, la explicación, digamos, del orgullo cultural. Por ejemplo, le quiero hablar desde mi propio origen. Yo vengo de una ciudad que está, digamos, cerca de la costa de África, donde pudo mantener su diáspora africana, su cultura, sus descendientes de una manera bastante especial.
What I heard from the specialists, it was my city called Salvador da Bahia. It's a very vibrant city outside of Africa, but looks like Africa. Go ahead.
Entonces, lo que he escuchado de los especialistas de que mi ciudad, que es Salvador da Bahía, es una ciudad muy vibrante fuera de África, pero que aún tiene un sentido, un espíritu como africano.
Because when the individuals were brought from Africa, from the diaspora, they have a higher level of education and higher level of in the social status where they came from.
Porque los individuos que fueron traídos de África, de la diáspora que existe ahora, es que tenían, en aquel tiempo los que los trajeron tenían un alto nivel educativo y tenían un alto nivel social del lugar donde ellos originalmente eran.
So they were able to establish strategies to maintain the culture alive. And until today, many researchers, when they want to study Africa, they go to Salvador da Bahia in North Africa itself, because the places that were colonized were destroyed by wars and all the, the way that colonization was in Africa.
Así que lograron establecer estrategias para mantener la cultura viva hasta hoy en día. E inclusive hoy en día muchos investigadores cuando quieren estudiar cultura africana, ellos van a Salvador da Bahía, no a África mismo. ¿Por qué? Porque esos lugares en África fueron colonizados, fueron destruidos por las guerras y toda la colonización, la profunda colonización que sufrió África.
So today you can go to Bahia, and Salvador da Bahia, you see rituals, you see dances, you see music, food. It's amazing, mind-blowing, because they create a way to keep the culture alive.
Así que si usted hoy en día va a Bahía, a Salvador de Bahía, usted puede ver todas estas cosas, todas esas incidencias de la música, la comida, es increíble. Es realmente una cosa que es sorprendente, porque ellos crearon una manera de vivir, de mantener la cultura viva, su propia cultura la lograron mantener.
So in tough times, like they had tough times, the time of they were enslaved. And my suggestion now is to keep, to maintain those traditions, whatever you have, as a repertoire of your own culture. Keep your language, keep your food, you keep your dances, as Dr. Abdool just said. Keep your faith in a way, of course, not to isolate, but a way to share common values in your own community, your own groups and families.
Así que en tiempos difíciles, como ya dijimos, o sea, para ellos cuando habían tiempos difíciles, por ejemplo, lograron superar todo esto incluso cuando estaban enfrentando la época de la esclavitud. Así que mi sugerencia ahora es hoy en día, para todos ustedes, de que mantengamos esas traducciones, cualquier tradición que tengamos en nuestra cultura, mantener el lenguaje, el baile, la comida, como dijo la doctora Abdool, y mantener su fe de una manera, digamos que verdadera y no aislarnos, porque de esta manera continuamos compartiendo en nuestra propia comunidad, en nuestros propios grupos y nuestra familia extensa.
And that's a way also to strengthen our sense of belongingness and keep our community alive.
Y es una manera también bastante importante de fortalecer nuestro sentido de pertenecer aquí, de mantener nuestra comunidad viva.
And I'm closing my speech about it. I'm just posting some options of those who want to learn more about mindfulness. There are some apps and links, and I'm also sharing resources in Spanish, and I'm available for any questions because I know that there are people who want to make some questions.
Andrea, you could email me that information, the resources, because we send a follow-up email after to all the participants. So if you feel free, you could just email them over tomorrow and we can add them to the follow-up email. But Michelle been having her hands up for well over 20 minutes now. And I can't forget about Michelle.
Well, thank you.
And everybody else, put your questions in the chat, raise your hands up. We may go over just 5 minutes. Feel free to stay. If not, thank you so much. Take the survey in the chat. We want to know how we did. Go ahead, Michelle.
Just some insight. I have my grandbabies. Their parents are my son married a woman from Haiti and my daughter married a man from Portugal. And when the ice first started coming around, at first I was like, it doesn't affect me, but it really affects everybody. And I think people need to understand that as a Black woman being raised in America, I am 70 years old and I've lived with fear my whole life. And I had to learn things like mindfulness, things like that to cope with what's going on. But I've been living through this my whole life. Every day I live with it. Every day I am a Black woman out there. They don't see me as a person. They see me as a Black female. And other immigrants, they don't see them as people. So we have to protect each other. We have to support each other. It's just very, it's not your problem. It's not my problem. It's our problem. Every single community is affected by it. When my grandson leaves to walk to school in the morning, I am so freaked out. But we have to protect each other. If you see it, protect our children, protect each other. Those are just my thoughts.
I couldn't agree with you, and I'm pretty sure everybody else on this call does. We have to look out for one another. We are better together. This is collective care. This is what community care looks like, right? So
you mean yourself, Rosie.
Oh my God, I was talking all that time. I want to this is what community care looks like, right? We have to look out for each other, support one another. And if people can't go out, you know somebody that's feeling isolated, needs something, and you can do it, give a helping hand, offer. That's how we start to take care of one another, right? Right. So it affects all of us, like you said, Michelle. Anyone else want to chime in? If not, I was wondering if Andrea could just bring us maybe 2-minute self-soothing practice, breath, I don't know, movement, anything. Have a great night, everyone. Okay, for those that have to leave, thank you for joining us tonight. But if those that want to just stay for another 2-3 minutes.
Yes, with pleasure.
Mindfulness practice, yeah.
Yes, sure.
Way to end, right?
So
yes.
I wanted to jump in before so that we can end with this. You know, for some people, mindfulness practice is very easy. For other people, they get more anxious if they have to sit still. So when I talk about getting up and dancing, I don't think Andrea is prepared to do that tonight, but that's the counter to sitting still. And eventually, as you practice, you can learn to sit still. So we have all kinds of ways to do mindfulness, and movement is one. And now I look forward to sitting still with Andrea.
Yes, I see your point. Yeah. Usually, for example, when I start a session, when I feel the group is very agitated, I start with walking meditation.
Yep.
You can, if you feel, for example, now I'm standing, you can do in any position that you want. But I just want to invite you to breathe in and breathe out. If you feel that it's too much for you, you can keep your eyes open. If you feel that it's not okay for you, just don't do it, just observe. So it's just an invitation. But I would start with some techniques that I use. First is to bring your attention to your shoulders first and try to breathe in with the belly and raise your shoulders until you reach your ears like this, like, oh my gosh. And then release at once. Breathe in deeply through the nose and release through the mouth. And really in again, really inhale and then release. I invite you as well, just put your hands over the opposite side of your head and breathe in first and then gently just bring your head towards your shoulder, like and give it just 1 second and feel the tension. And if you feel any pain, just be gentle and breathe in and breathe out. Release slowly the arm, raise the opposite side and touch the opposite side of your head and breathe in. Just lift the weight of your hand. You stretch the opposite side of your neck. And breathe in and breathe out. Stretch your neck, release the tension. Breathe in and release gently. And now cross your fingers and put here behind your head. Breathe in and try to stretch the back of your neck. If you can, try to reach touch your chin towards your chest. Breathe in and breathe out. And then release shoulder. If you want to sit down, I invite you to sit down and try to keep your back straight, but keep your feet on the floor. So what you can do with your hands, you can leave your hands on your lap. You can close your eyes if you feel okay. If you're not feel okay, you can just soft your gaze and try to find a point on the floor or a place that you can concentrate. In the same way, you can breathe in, breathe out. If you have noise around you, it is okay. It's part of the life. And slowly, just feel your belly, your tummy contracts and expand when you breathe in and release the air. Eventually, you have thoughts that you have to do more things after here, but just give yourself like a pause and say to yourself that's a moment to just breathe in and breathe out. If any emotion is bothering you, just embrace in a way that you recognize that. Breathe in, you breathe out. And stay here for a moment of peace, ease, not trying to control anything, not trying to go anywhere, and not forcing anything. Just breathe in and breathe out. In that state, you can feel your body. You might feel some tension. That is part of the experience. And slowly you can move your feet, your legs, bring your attention to the external world, what is around. And thank you for the opportunity to lead meditation.
Thank you so much. People are still here. 72 people still with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope everyone found this helpful. Nice
That
way.
felt good.
You can do that walking. Another opportunity, you can do that walking. So if it's hard for you to sit down, it's not a big deal. Don't feel bad about this. It's just
don't feel pressure to sit down.
No.
If that's not working for you, I'm a very fidgety person sometimes.
Yes,
I am a yogi, but I don't always sit down, cross my leg, and woo hoo hoo. No.
You don't have to do this.
I go
Forget
walk
it.
in, take mindful steps, move my body, shake it around, roll on the floor, do whatever you have to do to take care of you.
Yes, take care of yourself. That's the point.
Right. That's most important. Thank you, Andrea and Dr. Karen, for joining us.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
Lovely,
a pleasure.
lovely, lovely. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
If
you
you
for
haven't,
having us.
please take the survey before you leave. I'm gonna put it in there. Mary had put it in there, but I'm gonna copy and paste. Thank you again. Yes, I see all the love coming in. Look at that. This is beautiful. I appreciate it. Like, no rush, just, taking our time. I love seeing all the hearts, and I took the survey. Thank you so much. Look at all the love. Yeah.